Hello, and thank you all for being here again today with me on my podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. Her name is Michelle Bennett, and I actually met Michelle 7 years ago. We were both attending a writer's retreat near Santa Cruz here in California with someone we both really admire named Hope Edelman. And Hope is a well-known author, and she's also known as the guru of motherless daughters. And she wrote a book by that name as well about 30 years ago. And unfortunately, Michelle and I are part of the Motherless Daughters Club. We both lost our mothers when we were children, and it's really affected both of our lives, which is the whole point of this podcast. I interviewed Michelle about 7 years ago too, when I first thought I was going to write this as a book. And so I'm so thrilled to interview her again 7 years later and find out what's going on in her life. And Michelle, thanks for being here. I'd love to hear.
Thanks, Robin. I'm thrilled.
I'm so glad you're here. And I would love to hear a little bit about not the step story part yet. We'll get to that. But what you've been doing in your life recently, professionally, and what your background is a little bit. We'll get on after that to your childhood and kind of go backwards. But what are you up to now?
Yes. So as we are talking about my journey, you'll hear that I went off to college right after high school, but I didn't finish my bachelor's degree until just recently. I graduated with my journalism degree from the University of New Mexico just a few months ago, and hoping to put that to good use.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And yes, that is why we're here, is just to talk about your life and how you got to where you are today. And so if it's okay, I thought it might be easiest to just start in the beginning and work our way up. And maybe you could talk a little bit about where you grew up, your childhood. Go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. So I am an Illinois girl. I grew up in central Illinois in a couple of farming communities, first outside of Spring Bay, Illinois. And then for high school, I was at Glassford, Illinois, and surrounded by some wonderful people. Great community there.
And what was your family like? You didn't have siblings, right? You were an only child?
Yes, only child, lived with mom and dad. And I was an athlete. I was a high honor student and had lots of friends, played in the bands, played volleyball, softball. Really, I felt like I was just a typical Midwestern girl growing up in the 80s.
Right. And can you talk about what happened that changed your life a bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is critical to the story. Mm-hmm. So my father really struggled with mental illness. He was a Vietnam veteran and just had a number of struggles with that. And there was a lot of violence in our home as a result. And when I was 13 years old, my father shot and killed my mother in front of me.
That's one of those things that every time I've heard you say this, it takes your breath away. And I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that and go through that. And probably back then they didn't have the treatments for PTSD that they have now. And so we don't have to dwell on that unless you want to talk about it more, but maybe we can move on to what happened after that. Where did you go initially?
Yeah. Just before we do move on though, what I was diagnosed with much later in my adult life was complex PTSD. And they didn't even have, a word for that diagnosis until the 90s.
Wow.
So while I did get a lot of help, I had an incredible village around me that made sure I got counseling and that, I was able to truly move forward in my life. We still didn't truly know what we were dealing with until, decades later.
How did it affect you, the complex PTSD, in your early years?
Well, it made me really have a hard time trusting people. I was hyper vigilant in all situations. I certainly had commitment issues, especially as it relates to relationships. And, I didn't have the guidance of either parent, and, certainly not my mom. So it was very difficult to navigate on my own.
I'm assuming your father went to jail.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He went to prison and served, I don't even remember, 20 something years. Yeah, so that was hard.
I can imagine. I can't imagine, actually. Well, so where did you go right after it happened?
I stayed with some dear family friends immediately following this situation. Tragedy is what I should call it. And then I went on to live with family, aunts and uncles from there.
Okay. How was your experience with that? I mean, in a way, I think from what I understand, they had their own children. So you came in, I suppose, as a foster child, not really a stepdaughter. You're a relative. But did you feel you were part of the family? Did they make you feel blended, since we are talking about blended families, or did you feel sort of on the outside?
Well, it depended. It kind of went back and forth. I know that they did the best that they could. There were no resources. No one knew what to do with me, basically. Like, oh my goodness, here we've got this only child. She's lost both of her parents. They put a big emphasis on, school, obviously, studying, going to church, being active in my community. We just tried to pick up and keep going. I mean, if ever there was an example of the Midwestern way, it is you just keep going. And we did. And, somehow we made it through the days. And it was, some days just like everyone else, it's a grind, but we didn't know, I think, I certainly didn't know the depth and complexity of the trauma that I had experienced until much, much later in life.
Yeah, you probably had to cope by pushing it down maybe and just trying to get on with your life, I would imagine. And
right.
First of all, I just have to throw in there, I love your Midwestern references because I'm a Midwestern girl too. I'm from Kansas City originally. Yes. So I've been out on the West Coast for a long time, but I'm definitely a Midwestern girl at heart. So
you know how it is.
I do. And Midwesterners are the nicest people, hardworking and full of community. So I can see that. Were you able to continue all the stuff you were involved with, or did it change you? I mean, of course it changed you, but did it change you in any meaningful way?
I think that, well, of course it changed me, but I think that I learned to allow myself to lean on my community when I had always been the one who wanted to be in service to others. And it was funny, my cousin, who I actually refer to as a sister, Stacy, she told me once that, don't take away the opportunity for others to help you, because that gives them a reason to be in service, and it fills up their cup as well. So don't ever shy away from an opportunity where someone might be offering you a hand up as well.
That's great advice.
And that stuck with me. She told me that at a very young age. And yeah, I've always kept that in my
What a
heart.
wise young person to know that.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think that you felt the need to be of service just naturally, or do you think that you were often supporting your mother in those early years? And so maybe that just became part of who you are too.
I think a lot of it was modeled for
Mm-hmm.
me. I saw that in all of the women in my life, in our church family, in our immediate family. My father, when he was healthy, was very focused on his community and wanted to help anyone he could. He struggled terribly with mental illness, but I think you could ask anyone from either of our communities. He was a good guy that, he tried to help his neighbor
Yeah. I can only imagine that.
in spite of his struggles, obviously.
Yeah, that must have been extra confusing and hard to know he's a good guy, to know that he um, was helpful in his community and wanted to be of service, but yet had this violent side. That must have been so confusing as a child to reconcile with that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And then as I grew older and began dating, that was very much a part of the narrative that was running in the back of my mind at all times that, here's this wonderful guy. But I know that things can turn violent or even deadly at any given moment. So I'm not going to get too close to you.
Mm.
It made it very difficult
Yeah.
to trust.
I can imagine. So I know we talked a little bit about your high school years and how those went for you and how you were changed and what you did after high school. So can you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, like I mentioned, I did go off to college, but finding myself alone in a college town and, trying to focus on my studies, yet being so incredibly alone in the world felt, it was just so isolating
Yeah.
that I felt incredibly lost. And I thought, okay, I should put my bachelor's degree on hold. Let me just go home and get to work. And that's what made sense for me at the time.
That's what, honestly, with me too. I went off to college. I went off to a college I really wanted to go to and was proud to have gotten into, Tufts University, actually. And I was studying international relations and wanted to be a diplomat and all these things. And that's where I broke apart. My mom died when I was 10, and then had a stepmother all of those years after, and then she left the family right when I got to college, and all that grief, losing a second mother, just all the confusion of everything just came tumbling down on me. And I left, I dropped out, and I know you and I've talked, and if you feel like talking about it, but kind of was a bad girl. Like, I was a good girl, good student, and always was very involved like you. But during my high school years and junior high years, yeah, I was getting in trouble, doing things that probably wouldn't have done if my mom was around. And I think I was just doing things to push away the pain, I think you had a similar experience, right?
I sure
Yeah.
did. And something that I didn't get a chance to tell you that I'll tell you now, I had an incredible counselor who told me, I had carried a lot of grief and shame with me around that particular category, life experiences forever.
Yeah.
And she said, Michelle, there's no better way to feel alive. Could there be a better way? Don't be shameful. You were just trying to feel life again.
And probably also
And
looking for some love. I mean, I've never heard that. And thank you for saying that, because I guess I don't feel ashamed, but I just think of myself, I was pretty wild. And I think it's common. I've definitely learned that from Hope Edelman, that it's very
right.
common, especially with girls who've lost their moms. They really, are looking for whatever they can to grasp at. So,
Yes. And looking to replace that love that they've
yeah,
lost in their
yeah,
lives.
absolutely.
And our mothers would likely have guided us in different
Yeah,
directions.
for sure.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. And I don't think we'd be running around doing those things if our mother was around giving us that love. And frankly, our fathers were involved in there. And I mean, yours was in jail. Mine certainly was not, but he was dealing with his own life. So, well, okay, let's move on to some of the happier parts of your life. So how did you end up in New Mexico? And you're in New Mexico now in the Albuquerque area, but let's talk about that, and also how you felt about dating and marriage when you got there, and kind of where you were in your life.
Sure. I had an opportunity to move to New Mexico with a guy I was dating at the time. And I jumped at the opportunity because it was time for, it was time to start a life that didn't have that underlying narrative of what happened with my parents. And being from such a small community, obviously everyone knew the story. Yeah. And while they did a really good job of trying not to show the sadness and the grief, when they would see me, I could just feel it at all times. Everyone knew. And the opportunity to move away, to make new friends, new connections, start a new life, and then tell my story as I saw fit and when it was appropriate. That was a very freeing experience for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Get a complete fresh start. So can we talk about Lance?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. My favorite person. Of course, we can talk about Lance.
So you moved to New Mexico. What I hear the overall reasons you went there, but didn't you go there also maybe for a different guy, not Lance?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. Yes, I did move here with a different guy, and that did not work out. Obviously.
Yes. So what happened? How did this wonderful man come into your life?
Oh gosh. So I moved here in the late 90s and dated a lot of nice guys, great guys, whatever. And things just didn't work out for one reason or another. And then probably in the, I don't know, it was around the 2010 mark, 2011. I actually met Lance through mutual friends. And he was married at the time. So, we all were just friends, and that was that. And then in 2015, we started dating after the divorce, and, he was trying to navigate life as a single dad.
How old were you at that time? Just to get a picture. Ish.
So that would have been, I was in my early 40s at that time.
Early 40s, okay. Yes. And so how did what happened with your family affect your feelings about becoming a mother yourself?
Well, I had a very deep desire to create the family that I didn't have. I wanted the family structure. I wanted a strong, steady husband, and I wanted children to love and nurture. And yet I was also terrified of those things because obviously it hadn't worked out for my mom. So I didn't know if I could have that. I wasn't sure. And at one point, it was probably in my mid 30s, I realized that it was likely that I would be raising someone else's children or helping to raise someone else's children. Because the longer, the more time went by, guys I was dating had kids.
Yeah.
And so I started to get used to that idea that, I may not ever have my own children and I may be raising someone else's. So I guess I started to prepare myself that way.
Well, all right. So can you talk about what happened with Lance a little bit in your history and how you did come to be a part of a blended family? It sounds like you kind of understood it and you met him, and what happened?
We talked a lot about, when we were first dating, we talked a lot about the kids. And, he had has two boys. They were 7 and 11 at the time. And we were very careful about how to introduce me and just making sure that there wasn't any additional trauma. I don't want to say trauma. I mean, divorce it's so hard, no matter what the circumstances are. No child ever wants their parents to split up. They always want their parents together, of course. And so we were just very mindful of the way that we presented this to the kids. And Lance took his time. Lance, anyone who knows Lance knows he will take his time until he is ready. It will not happen. And I had to follow his lead as he's the parent. So I think it had been about 7 months that we'd been dating by the time I met the kids. And it was wonderful. I had a Great Dane at the time. So I bring my Great Dane over to the house and the boys are just, enchanted with, his name was Marshall. He chased them around the living room and they played and it was just lovely and, also terrifying to me because, when your prayers and your dreams come true, it's really something. I was thrilled and scared all at the same time.
If anyone deserves their dreams to come true, it's you for sure. And I know from talking to you, and I'd love you to just talk for as long as you want about your philosophy on being a stepmother and just, the example of waiting so long to be introduced to the boys. And it sounds like that was Lance, but I know you have so much respect for how you treat them and for how you've handled the whole thing. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about your philosophies because I have so much respect for you and admiration and truly wish I could have had that with a stepmother who was really, I don't know. I'm older now. And I know that it's really hard to be a stepmother or a stepfather, but I think that having true respect for your stepkids, bonus kids, whatever you want to call them, is a key. And I would love you to just talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I found that there aren't a lot of resources for people who are entering a marriage with children if they don't have children of their own. So for me, it was really important that there was never any confusion as far as my role. I'm not here to replace your mom. There is no replacing a mother. We both know that, right, Robin? Like no one will love you the way your mother does. There's only one. So anytime I had the opportunity to talk with them about that very thing, for example, when we'd be out to dinner and maybe the waiter would say, Mom, is that okay? Or, whatever, when they place their order, they would just smile, and then we would later have a conversation. We all know I'm not your mom. I'm your Michelle.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Right. So I am here in a support role. I love their dad so much that it was really important to me to reflect the love that he has for his boys in everything that I was doing as well. And it is, any parent will tell you that parenting is the hardest job there ever was.
Yep.
And step parenting takes it to another
Yep.
level, because they say that there's a stepmother's day. It's really not. If you're here for Stepmother of the Year award, they don't make those. Nope. You have to take the ego out of it and really focus on the needs of the kids.
Which I honestly, just from the stories I've heard for years from people in my own experience, I think that a lot of men and women in that position have a hard time with that. And it's not common, I feel like. So I think that those are really wise words.
Well, Lance and I talked a lot about it. Like, what does this look like? And can you do this? Because this is the childhood I want for my kids. These are the things that I want within, our household. And we were aligned with all of that. I wanted to create the safest space I could for them. I wanted them to know that no matter what happened outside our home, they could always come home and feel safe and loved, and that they are rock solid here. And I think that we, together, we were able to accomplish that.
Were the boys going back and forth to their mom's house and then to your house? Was it like a split custody, joint custody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is their mom remarried too?
Yes. Well, she has a partner and they are engaged.
Okay.
So, yes.
Well, so how have you, I've heard some examples, but I'd love to hear some more that just might help people, the listeners. What are some other examples of how you've had to handle that, being the stepmother? But I know in your heart, you feel like their mother, but you're very clear and respectful that you're not their biological mother and they've got their mother. But what are some other examples of ways you've dealt with that? I know you told me there was something recently that happened with some football things and it was hard for you.
Yes.
Can you share that?
Yeah. So, of course, our boys they live and breathe football, and so does their dad. We are a football family, and we are involved in an incredible football community here. And they have Mom's Night, where the moms go, and lots of football programs do. You see it on social media where moms are running drills with their kids. And, there was one Midwestern mom, God bless her. She just trucked her son. And I loved it. I loved it. It was great. Anyway, I don't get invited to that. It's awkward. Can't run drills with two moms, and maybe they don't want to highlight to the team that they have a stepmom. Who knows? We really don't get too deep into those things. I just let mom do the thing. And, I again, just try to be in a support role. I do my best to make sure they have what they need. And, I always try to make plans on that night for sure. But they go and take pictures and they have a wonderful time, and she deserves that. Of course she does. Of course. But I would have loved it too. Yeah.
Well, hopefully as they grow up more, there'll be a way to kind of balance both of you. In fact, just to make a plug for somebody else, actually, whose show I just finished watching last night, a woman named Tembi Locke, who is going to be a guest of mine soon. It was really highlighting in her story. It's called From Scratch, and it's actually been made into a Netflix series. But she had a stepmother and a mother, and didn't get along in the early part of the series, but definitely they started getting along. And it was really beautiful to watch that and how they both were able to be there. And I hope that'll be the case for you as they continue to mature and everybody kind of feels secure.
That's right. That I read or saw somewhere, someone had said this. I can't take credit for this. And if I knew who it was, I would give them credit in true journalism fashion. But the comment was that your stepchildren will be adults far longer than they were children. So it's important to focus on the relationship and meet them where they are, understand who they are, become engaged in the things that they care about. And through the years, you build that relationship. And then when they are adults, you probably will have a lovely friendship. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they'll look back, all I want for them is to be happy and healthy and live productive lives. And I hope that they look back and see, what their dad and I and their mom and their stepdad did for them. When things were rough, when things were not ideal, when, they're packing up their bags to go to the other house and they don't want to. It sucks.
Yeah.
But it's the reality of the shared custody agreement. Mm-hmm. I hope they know that we just tried to love them through it and did the best that we possibly could.
Well, it sounds like you absolutely have and are. And I know that comes from this place of having deep, deep empathy for children coming from where you came from. And I think you'll always have it. And I think you're going to have a lifetime of love with these boys. And I know how much your husband must appreciate who you are and how you are with them. So, well, I just wondering, that was incredible advice right there. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to just say that might help somebody else who's not in the kind of place where you are, who's struggling, who is grasping for how to handle the kind of situation you've been in.
I think it's very important to keep communication open with your partner. You need to express your feelings because no one is going to understand your point of view. So it's important to keep talking.
Be honest.
And it's also important. That's right. And it's important to keep your ego out of it. Remember why you came into the relationship in the first place. And do your best to let love guide the way. Lead with your heart.
That is honestly the first time I have ever heard somebody just really focusing on keeping your ego out of the way. I find it really profound and like straight to the point, it makes so much sense. And I think it's hard to do for most people, but I think it's an important message.
Yeah, I'm not perfect.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make you into Saint Michelle here. Sorry. But if you could tell, I have so much respect for you. But I think it's a great message, too, for fathers who have wives who are stepmothers, and same with mothers who have husbands who are stepfathers, is the same message on the ego. And remembering to keep the ego out as much as you can and give your children the respect. Don't force, which is kind of was my experience. Don't force everything. You have to keep that ego in check. So thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to know if there's anything else you'd like to share that you're working on, that you're excited about. If people wanted to reach you, you may not want to share that, but if you do, just whatever else, if there's anything else important you'd like to add about you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I am working on a memoir called Life from Behind. That's the working title. Just catching up with these boys and understanding, who they are and how we became a family and who likes ranch and who hates ketchup and how to pack their lunches, all of that. And also just another angle of life from behind is, catching up on motherhood without it truly being modeled by my mother, or having an opportunity to live our lives together. So I'm working on that. You can reach me on my Instagram is Michelle Bennett Writes. And that's a great place to connect with me if you're interested.
Great. I'm sure, and I know you've done your mother proud. She'd be so proud of you. So
thank you.
Thank you again for being here, Michelle. It's so great to see you. And I look forward to your book coming out one day, and you're really helping people. So I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's been a joy.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you to all of you listeners too. Thanks for being here today. And I hope you learned something from Michelle and from this conversation that will give you some new insight into your own relationships with your stepchildren. See you later.